right, welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays. Rejoining us here and blessing us with his presence is the Reverend Warlock. Welcome back, Reverend. How are things going with you now?
They're going. Strange. They're a little bit, you know, unsteady and steady all at the same time. Best way I can say it is just kind of put it out there as honestly as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Lost my house. I am currently have a friend of mine, a benefactor, who is putting me up at a hotel.
Oh, nice.
But I'm only going to be at the hotel for another week, maybe two.
Maybe two. Gotcha.
Actually, not at this hotel. I'm going to have to be moving to a different hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, you can't stay at a hotel, for indefinitely.
Yeah.
They eventually come along and they're like, yeah, we know you're giving us money, but we're kicking you out.
Yeah, well, of course, you're probably having too many rock star parties or something. I'm sure you're getting on their nerves at this point.
Oh, it's not me. It's Muda.
Oh, it's Muda's party. You're right. Muda's the nuisance.
Yeah. She ran into all of the members of Daft Punk the other day, and so it was pretty loud. No.
So harder, faster, stronger, better.
Yeah, basically.
That's awesome. Yeah, they probably used Muda's vocals for their next album.
It's the funny thing is she was in Heat not too long ago, so if they had been able to record, if I had been able to record her, I would have used her vocals.
How do you feel about having pets spayed or neutered? I mean, Bob Barker seems very pro for it, but like my parents used to declaw our cats, and I always felt that was cruel, But neutering and spading, I almost feel like that's more population control.
Spaying and neutering, I'm 100% for, honestly. Mm-hmm. The only reason I didn't get Muda fixed, I got sick.
Mm.
And it just... She's an indoor kitty. She's not out running around gallivanting and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I never taught her about safe sex.
You haven't had the talk yet? Oh.
We haven't had the talk. But no, I am 100% for it. I do want to get her taken care of because a female cat in heat is in misery.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like her suffering like that. And it's not like I'm going to take her around and be like, here's my kitty. She's really pretty.
Yeah.
You should date her.
Take her down to the alley and say, hey, introduce her to Tom.
Mm-hmm.
From Tom and Jerry, say, hey,
Well, it's like there was this one particular male cat over by our old apartment that I was half tempted to just be like, yeah, because he had good genes.
It's the most awkward meet the parents ever. It's like, or worse, this is like the Bachelorette.
Mm-hmm.
I give you this rose, bleh, or I give
yeah. Well, it was like I watched this cat, and I don't know the cat's name, but it was this big black and white kitty.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw him get grabbed and picked up by an eagle. And he fought it off.
Yes. That's a keeper.
And I was like, for thy reward thou shalt have my kitten's paw in...
That's awesome.
Marriage, but breeding,
Yeah. Need those genes. Hey, we'll call him Sylvester. Or I was going to say Sylvester might not be a good name now. We'll call him.
I was thinking Brock.
Imagine I wonder what was going through the. You said it was an eagle or a hawk.
Yeah, it was an eagle.
Imagine the what's going through the eagle's mind, and this thing is like you picked the wrong kitty. Whack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apologize for the computer moving. My legs are still giving me issues, and I have to kind of keep it on my lap so I can see what's going on. So, apologies to everybody watching. There's not an earthquake going on. I promise.
What?
I'm not in California.
Yeah, right. where you got plenty of earthquake. Hey, let's live on a fault line. What could possibly go wrong?
Well,
Nothing.
we've got the volcano,
That's true.
Mount Rainier. Oh, speaking of which, we had a thunderstorm here, and if you're not from Seattle, you don't understand that we really don't get them very often.
That's interesting because Seattle's known for
Rain.
rainfall, but thunderstorms are kind of
We get
not
them like maybe
necessarily
twice a
steady
year.
rain. Yeah.
We'll get like a springtime thunderstorm, and then
Hmm.
sometimes late autumn, or late summer, early autumn is when we'll get them again. But we don't get a lot of them. So anyway, I'm laying here the other night and heard an explosion. That's the best way I can describe it.
Wow.
The building shook, the windows were shaking to the point that I thought they were going to break,
Mm.
and it just rumbled. And my thought, because it woke me up, was, oh my God, Rainier just blew up. It was that loud.
Wow.
And I realized that I was right under a thunderstorm.
Oh wow. So like it must have been something must have hit nearby.
It hit right above the building.
Ooh. Did your
So,
building have like a weather? Was it the what do they call? Not weather vane. What do they?
lightning rod?
Lightning rod. Thank you.
I don't know for certain if it does or not. It's not that tall of a building. But yeah, I checked the weather center because I was like, what the heck is going on? It's obviously not Rainier because I'm not choking
Yeah,
to
you're.
death. But I was like, oh, lightning flash. Okay, now I know what's going on. And then checked the lightning storm tracker thing to see where the lightning had been. And I was like, oh, yeah, that was literally like right above where I'm staying. So,
It's interesting because I always think about like early man, primitive man, what they thought lightning was.
mm-hmm.
Long before we had any serious scientific discoveries of. I mean, other than I guess one of the first scientific discoveries was either fire or the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if a lot of influence in belief systems kind of came from that, like came
Oh,
from those.
absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
what would cause a bunch of people to live on Pompeii?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, yeah, we'll be fine. What's that?
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if a lot of those things are like I always thought, like, and again, my unresearched, totally not, I hadn't even Googled this, but I was kind of thought that like like Thor's hammer was the explanation for thunder because
Yeah.
like telling kids that like they're crying, oh no, that's just Thor banging his hammer. You don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Or him, or Odin riding Sleipnir,
Yeah,
his eight-legged steed.
yeah,
Uh, or let's go ahead and address the sacred elephant in the room.
yeah,
You know, Yahweh up
yep,
on Mount Sinai
mm-hmm.
doing
Yeah.
whatever he's doing, making thunder, and wind and stuff.
And I don't think and I think it's interesting because there's a lot of people that I've talked to a lot of folks about religion, and I have friends over here that are very fundamental Christians.
Mm-hmm.
I have friends that are very right wing in their other beliefs, and then I've got friends that are very very progressive minded, and both sets of very intelligent people, but there are a few of those beliefs that become part of their identity. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And it's like I don't. My experience in life is I don't want to dismiss anything completely because I I don't know. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like I've had experiences that I could only explain as divine,
Mm-hmm.
and then but also I'm a very critical thinker,
Yeah,
and I think sometimes it's us humans that muddle up everything more
it
than
is.
anything.
Um, it is very much like pro wrestling fandom for me.
Yes.
Um, and when I say that, it's like you've got your people who are WWE diehards,
Hmm.
love them to death, God bless them.
Yes.
You got your AEW fans that are AEW diehards. Love them to death. God bless them. And then you've got those people who are like, not only is WWE the best, you're evil for not liking it.
Yeah, what's wrong
How
with you?
dare you not like
Yeah.
AEW is... Tony Khan is Satan.
Yes.
Actually, physically, in the flesh. Satan.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at his hair.
Exactly. He has hooves instead of feet.
Exactly. Probably eats babies.
Right.
It's that literal. It's that same kind of tribal mentality. Mm-hmm. Yes, I have been taking notes on the podcast. Haha.
Ah, good. Yes.
It goes back to what you were talking about with the tribalism thing.
Yeah.
Where, like, I remember when I was growing up, for instance, anything outside of Protestant Christianity was questionable.
Mm-hmm.
And even other Protestant sects were questionable. The Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons weren't actually Christians.
Mm-hmm.
They were something else. Let's not even talk about Islam.
No.
And the Jews we can't criticize because Israel.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into politics on that one.
No.
But that's just where I was at. And as I grew up and as I became more scholarly in terms of, like, you know, in the Bible, 2 Timothy 2:15, study to show thyself approved, a workman who need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. That's what I wanted to do. And I said to myself, okay, I've got these 66 books in the Bible, but I know that this wasn't always the Bible.
Yeah.
Where's the rest of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And being raised Protestant, looking into the Apocrypha, even, the 16 books that are in the Catholic Bible that are not in the Protestant Bible. It's like, you know, the Bible Part 2.
Part 2, yeah, the sequel.
Well, it's not really a sequel. It's kind of like an appendix.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like Rogue One.
Yeah. Well, actually, in Latter-day Saints, would that be the, I don't know, the
Mormons?
Would that be the reimagining or or the Michael Bay?
Yeah, they're the Disney versions.
Disney Plus.
I'm going right to hell.
I'll be there with you, buddy.
But, you know, it was like, you know, and I was like, okay, I want to look into what they believe. And I went into it initially with, they're wrong, and I want to be able to prove where they're wrong with their own stuff.
Yeah.
The very arrogant, you know, look at me, I'm not exactly a minority, you know, within the evangelical movement especially. I'm kind of the poster boy for it, if I had better teeth. But it comes down, like I say, it comes back to that whole tribalism thing. And that's one of the things that keeps us apart, where I think that, I don't think necessarily that religion should bring us together, but I think our faith in our higher power should bring us together, or our faith in humanity, or our faith in a better way.
Is there a difference between faith and religion?
I believe so, very strongly.
Elaborate on that. Where do you see the difference in that?
Where I see the difference is, for me, faith is laid on something within, connecting to something without. Whereas religion is something outside, seeking to connect and seeking to control.
Ooh, the word control.
Because when you get into religion, you get into things like dogma.
Don't eat fish on Friday, or...
Yeah. Don't eat shellfish. Don't eat bacon. Don't eat this. And I'm sorry, but I refuse to believe in a God who would create bacon and then make it a sin. That's just a cruel
It's
God.
delicious. Yeah. Well, hey, while we're talking about religion, maybe I should change our background. Maybe this should be
Perfect.
let's get
It's cozy.
yeah, this will be our background as we get it more into religion. I'll go back here, but when we get really deep, we'll
That
switch
works.
back.
That works.
But I think you make a very interesting point, and I think there's a lot of times the people's definitions on different things kind of sometimes aren't on the same page, because I think faith is very important. Faith in humankind. I feel like a lot of times things get lost in miscommunication. Sometimes we focus on our differences rather than our similarities.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at, like, we were just talking about all these different sects of the different of Christianity, which
Just
Christianity
Protestant
is
Christianity.
yeah. There's you, like, if you mapped out Christianity, it would look like that meme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where Charlie Day is trying to track down Pepe Sylvia,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got all these lines, and yet fundamentally, most of them just differ on like little tiny little like dogma pieces of dogma, rather than we're all kind of seeking the same thing. And
it's an extremist view, and it's one that is often joked about in church circles.
Mm-hmm.
But believe it or not, one of the biggest not heresies, schisms in the American Evangelical Church. Are you ready for it?
Yep.
Did Adam have a belly button or not?
Interesting.
Literally, people will sit and debate, did Adam have a belly button or not? Well, he was the prototype for man. Therefore, he must have looked exactly like we did. Therefore, he had a belly button. But he didn't have a mother. Therefore, no umbilical cord. Therefore, no navel. Therefore, no belly button.
Yeah, and I guess did Eve have one either?
Yep. So if you're depicting Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, do you have belly buttons or not?
That's deep. Yeah.
And
If
churches have split over this.
That's crazy.
I'm like, no. You jumped the shark a long time ago.
You ever feel like God is just face palming sometimes?
There are times where I feel that God is up there and he's just... Okay, let's assume, now that we've discovered Göbekli Tepe, that we've been a civilization for about 12,500 years.
Okay.
I'm just basing it on archaeology, nothing else.
Yeah.
So civilization, we now know, began about 12,500 years ago, end of the last ice age. Cool, we're older than we thought. I am pretty sure that about 2,000 years ago, God just got to the point where he's like, I don't care. The kids are going to run around. They're going to throw cereal in the kitchen. They're going to shave the cat. I don't care. I am done. Give me a beer.
Yeah, give me a beer. What's that? Let me watch.
It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a parent.
I'm not, but we as a teacher, I feel like I have like 20 kids a year kind of thing.
So you understand that where you hit the I know I have the power to stop this, I just don't have the ability.
You're talking to a teacher in May? Mm-hmm. Yes. That's any teacher in May right now. In fact, the running joke is your substitute plans in September are very detailed. They're like 2 or 3 pages long. Your substitute plans in May are you do you, boo. It's like you just because we're blah, blah, blah at this point.
Yeah, it's on a blue Post-it note with a little smiley face.
Yeah, like, hey, put on this video. Yeah, it's I do think that, like, I feel like we really are, and again, we could dive into a bunch of different rabbit holes about, who's pushing divisiveness in our country and the world and this and that and all that kind of thing. But I think it's a little bit more, I wish we communicated better with each other and focus, and we're a little bit more honest with each other too, and honest with ourselves. I think sometimes we get caught up in an idea, whether it's a belief, or just a political idea, or just a culture idea, whether it's WWE versus AEW, whatever. It becomes part of our identity, so we start to have that confirmation bias. Mm-hmm. We start looking for that. Do you see that?
The thing that speaking of that confirmation bias, that's something that I've noticed where I've watched the way that people interact with other people, with me, the way that I find myself wanting to interact with people and having to pull myself back. Mm-hmm. Is very confrontational. It's very aggressive. And it's one of those things where it's like, if people were to approach you like this in public,
yeah,
you would probably end up with sore knuckles at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I'm a pacifist. But
well, other than that one time, but
well, he deserved it.
Yeah, all right. I'll let that one slide.
Let me rephrase. I'm a pacifist until it's time to not be a pacifist anymore.
Katie bar the door kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I am Irish after all.
Yes.
My mom used to joke with me about that. When your Irish gets up, you're definitely Irish.
Yes. When the accent comes out, you better step back from the Reverend.
Yeah. Because it only comes out if I'm drinking or if I'm upset. And if I've been drinking, I probably need to be taken to a hospital because it will mess me up and interfere badly with the medications that I'm on.
Exactly. Well, it's funny because what you're referring to, like, imagine some of the interactions we have on social media in real life. I always use the analogy of someone walking into a Burger King and yelling at everybody saying McDonald's is better and then just leaving. It's like, why did you take all that? Why did you put so much effort into going into Burger King? And I think some of it does relate to that whole, like, there's kind of, it's like that troll mentality, but it's like that attention. If I can't get the positive attention in my life, I'm going to get the negative attention.
Mm-hmm. There's that aspect of it. There's everybody else has their opinion, and a lot of people out there, I don't agree with their opinion, therefore I'm angry. Therefore I need to scream and shout about it.
Yeah.
Another problem is everybody has a voice now.
But
not everybody has the mental acuity to filter out the noise and see where they're being deceived. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not trying to sound like a know-it-all or anything, or like I'm talking down to anyone, but critical thinking is not our strong suit in this country. Mm. It actually scares me how little critical thinking there is.
How much of it do you think is kind of that drive-through mentality? I used to call some people, they want their politics in a Happy Meal. They don't really want, and this isn't a swipe at people like this, because
I think that's general media consumption, just to kind of take the burr off of everything, and so that it's not an attack necessarily. I think it's just the way we consume media. Mm-hmm.
Do you think, though, that some people are so busy, though, like they like going back to the whole, let the kids shave the cat kind of thing? Like, there's people that are they work all day, they're exhausted, so they have these beliefs, and in some cases it's their identity, so they're going to follow this checklist of things that they want to believe. But in some cases they're so tired that they just run with whatever they're told. And
I think that is a big part of it, particularly if you've grown up in a certain area, or a certain way. Like if you, in my case, if you grew up like me, which was evangelical church, or at least white Christian, didn't realize that I was a white Christian nationalist, but I was. I like to think of it as the inclusive white Christian nationalism.
Yeah, we're the good kind.
We're the good guys, really. We're like the first order.
Yeah, there you go.
We're not the empire.
Yeah, we're the first order. Different symbol, sort of.
Kind of, yeah.
Exactly. We make cookies.
Yeah. We let everybody in who's not, gay or trans.
Yeah, or commies.
Or this, or that, or,
Yeah. Let's get the list out here, actually.
And just imagine, I left like 25 years ago, and it's gotten worse since then. What were we? Where did this come from again? I'm sorry.
We were talking about how, like I mentioned, drive-through politics, and just how I think that some people, they don't want to have to do the work, and I almost feel like it's a bit of like where news used to be. There was only a couple channels, and it was like Walter Cronkite or somebody that would say, "This is what happened." And people just ran with it. But now it's like...
Now it's editorialism and...
But people are still running with what's being told. They turn on Fox News or CNN or whatever their poison of choice is, and they just run with what they're being told without doing any kind of investigation or critical thinking.
Or they get their news off of social media.
Yeah.
Which is without checking where the source was.
Yeah.
Like, that's the one thing that I want to scream at people, is double check your sources.
Yes. And trust me, bro, is not a source.
No. Trust me, bro, is not a source. This really cool person I follow on the internet is not a source.
Yeah.
A celebrity is not a source.
Blue checkmark doesn't mean a source.
Checkmark doesn't mean jack diddly dig. Other than in my case, the fact that somebody bought it for me, and I'm trying to convince them to stop doing it. Because trying to do a fundraiser when you have a blue check is kind of difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and also trying to explain, no, I swear, I didn't actually pay for this. Somebody paid for it for me.
Yeah. No, I didn't pay this from Elon Musk. I'm not yet. I think of stuff like I was trying to find while we were talking. I was trying to find something on Twitter, but it's lost in the Twitterverse. But one of the things that really stuck out to me recently, this was actually a few years ago, but it stuck with me to this day. It's a great example of people kind of taking the time to do any investigation, and how dangerous it can be not to being a critical thinker.
Mm-hmm. Back
when they were filming, they were getting ready to film the Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Chris Pratt had mentioned his beliefs, and he's not a very hardcore Christian. He's not like a Westboro Baptist Church. In fact, he's very liberal in a lot of his views on things. But he says he's a Christian. He wears that as part of who he is, but it's not all of what he is.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there seemed to have been a big backlash. And of course, I understand folks that have had super negative experiences in religion because how aggressive a lot of folks can be.
Yeah.
And so there was this kind of this negative bias towards Chris Pratt saying he's a Christian. And immediately a lot of assumptions were made about him, then he must hate trans people. He must be this. And so somebody came out with posted some old tweets of his allegedly, that were saying some racist things. And it took off like wildfire. It's the old adage, shows that Winston Churchill said, the lie can get halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this, it took off, and there was this big campaign to get Chris Pratt fired, and people were saying, people were denouncing Chris Pratt. They were like, okay, now watch this. All the Marvel people are going to defend him, but that's because they're crooked. And it turns out, now Chris Pratt, to his credit, didn't respond at all.
Mm-hmm.
Some people came out and defended him. Some of the people were kind of, I don't know. Turns out the tweet was faked. It was photoshopped.
Yeah.
And they put Chris Pratt with the blue check mark, and then they put somebody else's racist tweet under it. And when it was, and then when that came out, the person that did the fake Photoshop said, well, he probably would have said that anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things where it's like, how dangerous that could be. Yeah. How dangerous and to me, regardless of what you think of Chris Pratt, what's dangerous about that is it's damaging that a person's career. And how quickly people wanted to believe that.
Yeah.
And that's scary to me.
And how easy it was for them to just jump from he said he's a Christian to he's obviously a racist to someone deciding that they were going to do something to prove that.
Yes.
Now, you and I have talked. You know that I am the first guy who will step up in defense of people against the church.
Yes, absolutely.
However, in this particular instance, you've seen me in the collar as well. I am a Christian. It took me 25 years to be able to comfortably say that again, and I still have difficulty saying it because what I believe is so completely different from what I was raised in.
Yeah.
That it feels like a different religion entirely and a different faith system entirely, even though it's Christianity. Or at least an iteration of Christianity.
I feel very similar to that. I think a lot of people feel that way. To be honest with you.
And again, I'm not trying to sound like I have solved these mysteries.
Well,
I'm not a guru. I don't want anybody to follow me, except on Twitter.
Shameless plug.
I try. But it's like the conclusion that I came to was you've got the Old Testament, you've got the New Testament. Those are great. Those are wonderful. You've got the Apocrypha. That's cool too. What else was going around at the time? What was being read? What books were being passed around? What was going on in terms of the geopolitics of the area, the philosophy of the area, what was going on in society? And you realize that you're right in the middle of the Greek and Roman and even Egyptian mystery schools.
Yeah.
And you start looking into where the Jews were, and they came through Babylon, with the Babylonian captivity, which, little footnote here, one of my biggest foibles is when people say that there's nothing in the Bible that is historically accurate. I hate it when that happens because it completely undercuts the criticism of the Bible.
Yeah.
And makes you look like an idiot because there is history in the Bible. There may not be a lot of it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of it that's wrong, but there is, like, the Babylonian captivity happened. We have the Babylonian records to back up the Bible, which is important because from Babylon and from Persia, from the Persian captivity as well, under Nebuchadnezzar, we get Zoroastrianism worked into a lot of the Bible, and a lot of the old Akkadian and Sumerian mythologies come into Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're going to study to show yourself approved and divide what's true and what's not, it's kind of important to read as much of what was going around at the time as there was.
Yeah.
And then you get up into the New Testament and you start dealing with things like Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, the Greek philosophers, because the New Testament was written in Greek for a Greek audience and a metropolitan audience, a cosmopolitan audience, because Greek was kind of like English back then. It was the language of trade.
Yeah, got to speak like Socrates.
Mm-hmm. Pythagoras.
Yeah, there you go. Pythagoras, yeah. He had a great theorem. He had a great theorem.
There's a Donald Duck cartoon from the 1960s where there's a scene of him with the laurel leaves and the toga with the Pythagorean pentacle drawn on his palm. And I want to find a still of that and caption it about something like Donald Duck invoking black magic against Ron DeSantis.
Not suffering, so that's Sylvester. I get it. Yeah, I can't
Disney
do it.
Ain't fucking around.
Yeah, Disney brought out the A game. Do you think that, like, I've always felt, though, and it's funny because I have some friends of mine that are very intelligent, and like my stepfather is a Methodist minister. Mm-hmm. I have found that a lot of the Methodist leanings are they can be very analytical, and they can be very logical, but then in some cases they're also sometimes can be fanatical too. Mm-hmm. But my stepfather, he's very logical. Like you would think he would be more of like a professor rather than a reverend, or rather than a pastor. But he takes a very logical approach. But sometimes I feel like sometimes what people dwell on, nitpicking things and like throwing out the baby with the bathwater, throwing out. If you really break down like the message of the Bible, it fits today from the standpoint of love one another and don't be a dick, be and try. And I think that gets lost in a lot of people because they get caught up in that dogma. They get caught up in these things that are so not as important. Mm-hmm. As I always think it's. Go ahead. Did you have something to add?
I was just going to say, it's like, again, taking it back to the wrestling thing. Rather than watching a good match, people nitpick it to pieces.
Yeah.
Or a Star Wars movie, or whatever. Rather than taking it for what it is, taking the good, leaving the bad. They grab the bad.
Yeah.
And this is awful, this is terrible, this is horrible. Even if that is a list of things that they're not supposed to be doing from their religion.
Yeah.
And they use it to run around and say, you're not supposed to be doing this, you're not supposed to be doing this, you're going to hell, you're a sinner. I have a newsflash for you. Everybody doing that, that's a sin.
Yeah. And it's tends to be like, I think a lot of people, something that really always bothered me all my life is self-righteous people, regardless of whether it's religious based or from a political stance or just in some cases, just from a like position of power, where people, they get they get this higher feeling of themselves that they're the expert in, even when they're not being logical about it, and that has always bothered me. Have I talked about the umbilical cord analogy between Republicans and Democrats with you before?
You may have, but refresh my memory.
I can't remember if I've brought it up on the podcast before, but basically I find it interesting.
I was going to say, bring it up, and that way the people watching the podcast can
there you go.
Be enlightened as well.
Well, it's I find it interesting, and again, this is just a generalization, and this is not specific people, blah blah blah. But I always think it's interesting that a lot of anti a lot of anti-abortion, pro-life advocates, the real foaming at the mouth, fundamental pro-life advocates, they're very adamant about it. They're fired up about, abortion should be illegal, it's murder, blah blah blah. And then as soon as the umbilical cord is cut, it's like, all right, kid, get a job, you freeloader.
Yep.
Good luck paying those medical bills. Your mom better get back to work too soon. And there's a lot those same advocates don't seem to be also looking at ways to make having a child and going through that easier. And
are you familiar with a group called The Family?
Not really, no. Unless it's Vin Diesel's group.
Finish your thought.
Well, we can talk about it. It seems to me like if you really wanted, if you didn't want to just hear yourself yell, and you actually wanted to decrease abortion rates, then I think creating a society where there are things in place to help medically, financially help mothers have children and raise a family, I think that you would lower it. Now, again, it's not my personal belief, but those people that do want abortion to be banned, if instead of attacking it like that and make this, if you ban something, if we learned anything from prohibition, if you make something illegal, people are still going to do it. They're just going to do it in a much more unclean and unsafe way. But if you really want to decrease it, you got to make having a baby more appealing. On the flip side, the people that seem to be my body, my choice, the people that are foaming at the mouth about like abortion should be, completely legal, what have you, and they don't take the time to really take the time to understand the other person's side of, it's people aren't trying to take away rights, they're trying to advocate for the unborn child, and there is something there. It's not they're not sitting there trying to be anti-woman. They're trying to advocate for the child, and they get foaming at the mouth about that. But as soon as the umbilical cord is cut, that embryo, that thing, suddenly it's like, okay, now we're going to let this thing that just was born tell us how to live, tell us how they want to live. Suddenly it has its own identity. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I feel like and again, it's the empty cans that make the most noise. It's the extremes on both sides. And nobody takes the time to ask, hey, maybe a woman, should have a right to, there's a lot of situations where a woman should really have an abortion. Maybe, abortion is murder, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily always the wrong thing.
Here's the thing. I don't believe that abortion is murder. And the reason I say that is because I've held a stillborn baby. I don't believe that life begins until first breath. And I also base that on the Bible, where Adam wasn't Adam until God breathed the breath of life into him.
Okay.
There's several passages that refer to God breathing the breath of life. And the act of the baby's first cry in many faiths and many traditions is literally seen as the life announcing that it has come into this world.
Yeah.
And the soul entering the body. In some traditions and some cultures. I don't base everything I believe exclusively on the Bible either. That's a very important footnote that I should throw in there. Now, having said that, I personally would not want to have to make that choice.
Yeah, same.
Because of that, I want that choice to be there. I don't want to limit it based on what I think, because it's never going to happen to me. I'm never going to be put into a position where I didn't want to have a kid and now I have to. Or I do want to have a kid, but it's an ectopic pregnancy.
And I think you're hitting the nail on the head. And I think this is where we could get a lot more progress with this issue if we break it down kind of like that. In that, have the ability to have the freedom to have the choice. Mm-hmm. To make that choice, because you almost then you're arguing the difference between legal and moral. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, maybe I'm not explaining it right, but it's like it's kind of like okay, great. This is going to be
something that is legal versus something that is ethical.
Yeah, there you go. Like, or one of my close personal friends, he comes over every Wednesday night. He's our producer for the podcast, Shane. He's vegan. His whole family's vegan. Mm-hmm. And yet he doesn't push that on anybody. He doesn't sit there and go, you actually shouldn't eat that steak. But he has his own beliefs and he has his own reasons for being a vegan. And yet it's like, I don't think, like, he doesn't sit there and think that meat should be illegal.
Yeah.
But he has the right to choose to not eat meat, but he's mm-hmm. fine with, like, we'll sit there and eat a steak in front of him and he doesn't flinch. Yep. Because it's not necessarily a great analogy, but the point is there's something to having the freedom of choice. Whether and it gets dicey, but see, I understand. I can't sit there and yell at people that are against abortion because I want to understand their side, because I don't think it's a bunch of fundamental idiots that are just not thinking it through.
See, that's my bias, is because the people who raised me to be anti-abortion were a bunch of fundamentalist idiots who didn't think things through. Yeah. Case in point, you don't want to have abortions. Okay, cool. Let's talk about birth control. Nope, we need to ban that too. Hold the fuck up.
Wait. Back it up. Wait, what? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was
pardon me for the F-bomb, by the way. But yeah. We can take that out in post.
We can fucking curse all we want.
Okay, cool. A fucking man.
Hold on. All right, continue.
Yeah. Looks just like home.
Nice and toasty.
But yeah, it's like that to me is, it's like you've got to, okay, we understand that it's against your religion to use birth control for whatever reason. I still don't understand it. I've read the Bible. I think you're way too obsessed with Onan.
Yeah.
That was like one dude that was told not to, and not to pull out, and God killed him because he pulled out. And because of that, nobody can masturbate or anything anymore. Yeah. So birth control is illegal.
Hey, every sperm is sacred. Every sperm is sacred.
Every sperm
I'm Protestant. I can do whatever I.
Yeah. But that was the thing that got me, is even in the Protestant churches, they were like, no, you can't use birth control. Even after you're married. And I'm like, no.
What?
No.
Yeah.
You're overstepping your boundaries. What I do with my partner is between me, my partner, and God.
Well, how would you explain wet dreams? I mean, you're spilling your seed, but you're not in control of that,
Yeah. I personally would explain it as, well, this is a buildup of bodily fluids that occurs because of an increase in hormones.
Yeah.
And give the scientific explanation of it in terms of the religious explanation or the philosophical explanation, switch to decaf, breathe, and realize that this is just something that your body does.
Yeah.
It's not a spiritual thing.
Mm-mm.
It's not a demonic attack. You know, it's not Lilith coming into your bedroom and, you know, or a succubus coming into your bedroom and doing weird things. It just happens.
We had
And
talked. Go ahead.
when you grow up in a very cult-like environment,
Mm-hmm.
where witches and ghosts and demons and boogeymen were considered as real as and tangible as anything else, you just couldn't see them.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous thing, a dangerous way to live, because if it's there even without proof or evidence, hi Muda.
Hey, Lou.
You know, if it's there without proof or evidence, your mind can just say, "Oh, well, this is just the way things are." And if, you know, like myself, you have mental health issues that you're dealing with that are undiagnosed, that becomes a very dangerous thing.
Hey, now there's therapy right there. There's the good therapy. Hey, Muda.
Let me say hi. No.
All right, that's enough. That's a typical cat right there. The atypical cat. She's awesome. I I was thinking about it. Like I've had conversations with so many folks on here where we talked about mental health today and how we talk about it. And again, we don't know everything about it, but imagine like how people 100, 200 years ago would classify someone with bipolar disorder or somebody with schizophrenia or somebody that has like is on the spectrum. You know, would they see it? Would they use demonic possession or something as an explanation rather than
Yes.
more scientific?
Yes, even 30 years ago.
Yeah, and you
That was like I've had, I want to say, 4 exorcisms.
done to you?
Yes,
Wow.
performed on me. One of them was particularly violent. Not
Wow.
that
Was it like Linda Blair or was it a little bit? How did that go down?
No, it was I was beaten
Oh,
to drive the demon out of me.
yikes.
The demon being ADHD, bipolarity, schizoaffective disorder, CPTSD from being raised in an abusive religious environment, childhood SA within the church.
Hmm.
You know, and I'm the one getting beaten
Yeah.
and
Right.
having the demon driven out of me because I couldn't pay attention in school.
Wow. And did it help?
I'm much better now.
Okay. Okay. I was gonna that Anthony Perkins. Who might think? Yeah, Norman Bates. Okay, Norman. He wouldn't hurt a fly. Or no, not no. Clockwork Orange.
Yes.
Malcolm McDowell. Oh, I'm much better now.
Love
Did
that
they
movie.
did they do that? Oh, push your eyelids open too, and
Not
make.
quite, but yeah.
Uh, can't should we?
It was actually that got me to go into the youth ministry in the first place because I wanted to try to be a stopgap between that sort of abuse in the upper echelons and the kids coming into the church
Oh
and
wow,
coming up in the church. I wanted to be like
a buffer.
a buffer, a guard dog, basically, sheepdog.
That's right. Have you ever thought about writing a book?
Mm-hmm. Several times.
You know, ChatGPT can help. You can just put in a few words and let it.
Nah.
No, I know we could get into that. That's amazing though. It's heartbreaking that you felt the need to do that.
What was more heartbreaking was realizing that I needed about 10 more of me. Um, I don't talk about it often, but we lost. Or, I say I lost because it was under my watch, but I lost 8 kids.
To what? To suicide or to?
A couple of suicides. There were a couple of pacts made, and in a couple of cases, there were kids that were taken out by their parents for being
Goodness.
LGBTQ.
That's not how it's supposed to be, man.
When I say 8 kids, I'm talking 8 kids in like 3 years.
Yeah, not all at once. It wasn't just like a mass thing.
Well, no, it wasn't like a bus accident.
Yeah, over time.
It was over time, and it was always for the same reasons. Um, I
Is
had
it?
I was supposed to cover up the pregnancy of a 14-year-old girl who wasn't sure if it was her father or her uncle who was the father of the baby. And that was very difficult because one of them was the pastor and one of them was the associate pastor.
Oh, and see, those are the experiences that rightfully bias people towards religion. I mean, it's kind of like, I is it possible to forgive those people because of their ignorance, or was there like should there have been a moment where they are questioning, hey, this isn't right, or do you feel like they were truly doing what they thought was the right thing? I have a hard time forgiving people.
I'll answer it this way. When the perpetrator says, you should forgive me because God says to forgive you, to forgive people who have harmed you, and when other people who have perpetrated it are saying the same thing, what they're saying is, let me get away with it because you're good Christians. And even though I did something, and I'm gonna let you know, I have a very broad, I grade on a curve when it comes to sin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very forgiving of most things, but when it comes to sexual abuse, when it comes to child abuse,
Yeah.
when it comes to things like that, that's kind of an unforgivable sin in my book.
It's almost
God
irreparable
can
damage.
forgive them, but they're still accountable for
Yeah.
their crimes.
Yeah.
And
That's
they
kind of what.
still need to be prosecuted and punished for their
Yeah,
crimes.
and I'm saying that I think like, because to me, forgiving somebody is more about, like, for me to forgive somebody for a crime, it's more about me than them. It's
Mm-hmm.
like they should still be held accountable. But I see
Yeah.
what you're saying is it's like you need to forgive me and therefore not talk about it. Like
Yeah,
I believe in forgive but not
they're
forget.
not asking for forgiveness. They're asking for cover.
Yeah, like
And
forgive but not forget is.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, or they're asking for they're asking for forgetfulness.
They're just saying to forget this and let's move on, which is providing cover for them. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
most pastors are slick enough to pull that off.
Well, like I remember reading stuff about like the Salem witch trials where they would find some young girl and say, we need to inspect you for witch marks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like child abuse, like pedophilia and beating kids. Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about a spanking. I'm talking about like the hitting them with a wrench and stuff like that, and just
Mm-hmm.
in emotional abuse too. It's so damaging to kids.
It is.
Because they're in that developmental stage, and their brain is wiring is putting the wires together as they grow. What you do to a 6 or 7-year-old, it's like it's in their core wiring.
Yeah.
It's not there. And now
it's part of their operating system.
Yes, yeah, they're building the mainframe at this point. They're building the motherboard, and if you do something really effed up with them during that time, it's going to really fry the circuits, and they're going to deal with it the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and
I do think also, I feel like sometimes
if you're not careful, you can accidentally install Vista on your child.
I think some people have Windows Vista, or some people have got they go back to DOS, or they get the blue screen. I feel I do have some thoughts. I have some concerns. I see a lot of parents kind of swinging the other direction, like the pendulum on the other side. Because kids do crave structure. They need to know where the limits are. They need to know, and I think sometimes being a parent is tough because you have to be firm. You have to be the parent, and you have to have structure and rules. But I think there's some folks that may have been under that kind of abuse that are trying to go the opposite way, and they're overcompensating. But abuse is it's so gnarly in how it affects a child's self-esteem. It manifests physically sometimes, and it's probably one of the worst crimes you could do, because you're destroying. You're not like, this is not a formed person yet. You're messing with their whole life.
How often have you met people who are your friends, and you see them getting into these bad relationship after bad relationship after bad relationship after bad relationship, and it goes back, and you learn about them, and you find out they were abused as a kid?
Yep. They also say that a lot of abusers were abused themselves.
It's, talking about breaking the cycle and things like
That's
that.
Interesting. Yeah.
But when that's laid as the groundwork for what love is, love always has a condition that comes with it.
Yeah.
Goodness, happiness always has a condition that comes with it. That condition being the abuse.
Yeah.
You have to take the abuse if you want to get the love.
That's where you get those sayings, like you don't know them like I do. When the abuse victims say that, like, oh, he does this because he loves me.
Or they'll get better.
I'll change him.
I can love them out of this. I can love them through this. That was my big one. That was my big downfall.
Well, you wanting to be a buffer to help those other kids too. I mean, that's terrible. I've talked with folks that victims of abuse. There's a couple folks I've been talking to. They're reluctant to come on the podcast, and I understand why, because it's deep stuff they want to get into. But it's a situation where, like, one particular case comes to mind where there's a person who was abused as a child, and her brother was also, but they both are dealing with, and again, this is only from my understanding from her telling me, but they both have dealt with the abuse two different ways. She turned it inward and became very self-loathing and very, that you talked about last time. We talked about that feeling of shame, where it's like scalding water, down your spine. Whereas he was in denial and kind of went the other direction with it, where it was like he turned to drugs, and he got really in bad shape. But he would always mock and criticize her when she would bring up the abuse, and he would like, oh, you're making a big deal out of nothing. There's no. In reality, what it was is he's in denial about it, because if when he started to accept what happens, then there's a lot that he has to unpack.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
it just
very, very familiar.
Ugh.
Sadly. But it's one of the reasons I enjoy things like this and discussions like this, is because it does give us an opportunity to, like those of us who have been through the process a little bit more, and who've been, therapy is wonderful, by the way. Psychology and psychiatry are your friends. They're not your enemy.
Yeah.
It's not demons trying to take you away from God. It helps. You need it. Trust me.
Talking it out.
You know,
I would think God would.
I'm still a believer, but I have no problem with psychology and psychiatry. That has not led me away from God. As a matter of fact, it's helped me see that I wasn't angry at God.
Yeah.
I was angry at people and the church.
I've always felt like, again, this is kind of, I think you and I are very similar in our beliefs. We came from similar but different ways. But like, I don't feel like God would want you to not investigate something. I mean, I think there's things, there's guidelines, there's things that are like, hey, if you do this, it's gonna mess you up. And like, don't get into, if you look at like the 7 deadly sins, if you actually look at them, they can ruin your life, but not because you're a sinner. It's because, like, wrath. I make my worst decisions when I'm upset, or if I want to cause harm to somebody, or if you end up punching somebody at an Irish pub or something, like that kind of thing. If you let wrath get a hold of you, envy can consume you. Lust, lust can really mess you up. And if you look at all of that stuff, it's more.
There are things that actually erode the self.
Yes. Thank you. You explained it better than me.
They weigh on you, and they overtake and become part of your life.
Yes.
And rob you of joy. They rob you of the ability to express love. They rob you of the ability to love yourself and love your fellow human being.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's what's more important, is loving your fellow human beings. And that person's transgender, so you got to back away from it. I'm like, no, they're human. Like, and it's like, are you a biologist? Are you a psychologist? Are you an expert about this stuff? No. I remember my religious experience has been interesting, because in kindergarten, I went to a Catholic kindergarten, but we weren't Catholic, but we went to this Catholic private school. So fortunately I had Sister Rose and Mrs. Burke, but the first graders had Sister Charles Bronson, and the second graders had like Sister I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So like they would get the slap on the knuckles and such. But I was fortunate, but I got to see that very narrow view of things, and then of course, being a military brat, we traveled around, and I had Department of Defense schools. When we moved to Philadelphia, we had the option of either me going to a public middle school or going to a private Christian school. And this Christian school was a Baptist school. We weren't Baptist believers; we were Methodist, but I went to a Baptist school, and I remember like a couple of the kids that would go to the public middle school would walk through where we would have recess, and there started to be this like belief. I remember one of the teachers told us that those kids that go to regular middle school are going to hell, and it was treated. It wasn't like she was trying to explain something. It was like, it's matter of fact.
Yeah.
Like it's just, they're going to hell.
The stop sign is red. Those kids are going to hell.
Exactly. And it frustrated me, because I was like, well, who are you to say that? Like, what makes you feel like this? And then this same teacher, would try to we're talking about music, and my dad was really into Creedence Clearwater Revival, CCR, and a lot of my music taste came from what my dad would play, and so that's why I got into. I was like, oh yeah, I we're talking about something, and I mentioned CCR in class, and she kind of got this offended look and said, "You know that they're a cult, right?" And I kind of looked at her like, "What?" Like, yeah, they're a cult group. And I didn't. That was the first time I think I even ever heard the word cult mentioned. I'm in sixth grade, and I'm kind of like, "What?" And she tried to explain that they were like, worship. They were worshiping not the devil, but they were worshiping like frogs or something. And I go home and ask my dad, and of course he laughs and he says, "No, let me explain." But it was one of those things where, like, that was like one of the first times I saw where the people that were teaching me may not know what they're talking about. Here's my big question that
42.
Great, that's the answer. Exactly. That's the answer to that. Great callback, by the way. What are the mental health benefits? And we talked a lot about the negatives, but we can still get into it. But what are the mental health benefits and challenges of religion and mental health?
The number one.
Are there benefits to religion and mental health?
I believe so. However, I believe that you have to be very careful with it. Because the one thing that you don't want to do is use mental health treatment as a false validation for your beliefs. For instance, one of the diagnoses that I live with is schizoaffective disorder, borderline multiple personalities. I say borderline, occasionally we go across the border.
Survey says.
Sí, señor. My survey says. Hey, lucha libre!
Lucha libre, yeah. There you go. I'll leave the donkey shows jokes aside for now. Otherwise, it would be this.
The only donkey show that I'm interested in is Shrek.
Yes. I'm making waffles.
And in the morning, I'm making waffles. I love that movie.
Well, are there benefits to religion and mental health?
I think that there can be. However, it has to be, as I say, very, very carefully. It's very easy to take your mental health and kind of run with it. Your mental diagnoses and kind of run with them and be like, oh, well, this is the way God made me. Therefore, I get to do X, Y, and Z in accordance with what this book says. Or in accordance with what this particular...
doctor or something.
Well, not only doctor, but this tradition, this religious tradition says. Your more extreme groups, it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, too, is I think that more than anything, when it comes to mental health, the first thing that I would say is to extract yourself from extremism of any kind.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to... If you can't look at something analytically, and you can't look at something from the outside or from the other perspective, then your religion is going to be a detriment to any mental healing that you have. And when I say that, I mean there's a big difference between I prayed about it and I went to the doctor and God helped the doctors heal me or get better. And I went to a doctor once and got some pills and now I'm just going to pray.
Yeah.
Like faith, you have to continue in the walk and in the steps of getting better, of the mental health treatment. And because of that, I think overall that religion is more detrimental to mental health than it is helpful. Faith and hope and things of that nature, I think, are much more conducive to mental health.
Circling back to our definition of faith versus religion.
Faith versus religion.
Yeah.
Religion, where it's the way I had it described to me was religion is man's attempt to reach for God. Faith is God reaching for you.
Ooh, I like that.
And if I'm trying to do something and if I'm trying to adhere to something that is to help me, like my cancer treatments, my psychological treatments, the physical therapy for the strokes, if my religion says, well, that's demonic, because there's a lot of religion that does say that psychology and psychiatry and things like that are of the devil and you shouldn't do them. Again, in my personal experience, religion helped me. Mostly because in my experience, it was kind of to religion to go and get treatment. But overall, as much as I hate to say it, I think that religion is more detrimental to people with mental health issues than it is helpful. Because it's far too easy to either put them into a box as, oh, you're demonically possessed or demonically oppressed, or even worse, God has put a special anointing on your life. Because that's what I was raised with. I was basically given the mantle of a prophet when I was like 8, 9. I was supposed to be this mighty man of God in the end times and so on and so forth. Had people prophesy about me being a great man who would be assassinated in public. I'm literally,
what?
You know.
What? That's pretty specific.
Yeah, I'm shot in the head, nonetheless.
Oh.
While I was speaking in front of a bunch of people, I'm like, wow, that one came true. It comes true every day on Twitter.
Yeah, you think it that way, yeah. Oh, wow.
You know, but it's like again that, and you can probably tell, and for those of you who are a little more paying attention, you can probably see that I'm in a little bit of a flux, mentally speaking, right now, because I'm actually having to think through a lot of this stuff and realize, no, religion is not good for people with mental health issues. I think exercises from religion, like meditation, prayer, I think that those things can be beneficial to you.
I think so. I think that the way you define it, like the way that you define religion as this organized belief system, you know, like I think if you think of it that way, yeah, let me ask you this: do you think that God wants us to be critical thinkers?
Yes.
And like I don't want to say it's okay, but like, we should, like, we're given a brain, we should probably use that brain.
If you look at the Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, which are attributed to Solomon, who was said to be the wisest man who ever lived, it gets into that. You know, it gets into the in the New Testament again, 2 Timothy 2:15. Study to show thyself approved, rightly dividing the word of truth. That's is that not the definition of critical thinking?
Yeah.
You know, study everything and figure out what is right, figure out what is correct, and if this particular scroll has an ad in the side that's trying to sell you monatomic gold, hills. It's probably not the best scroll to be driving your research from.
Yeah, no snake oil salesman
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. I think I told you, we talked about this last time where I told you the story where when my parents split up, and while I was living in Philadelphia with my dad, I would visit my mom, and my mom kind of went. It was one of those things where like I knew as a kid that them splitting up was the right thing, and I've always said that a bad marriage is worse on a kid than a divorce
Mm-hmm.
because then you get two people pretending and arguing all the time instead of trying to be fine themselves. And my mom kind of went on a spiritual quest and to find herself. She went to work. She went to school to get her degree at CBN, which is now Regent University. But it used to be CBN University, and she kind of went on this religious path. And my dad, he was now a single naval officer living in Philadelphia right when Officer and a Gentleman came out. Yeah, he was knee deep for a couple of years until he met my stepmom. But that was a whole that was quite a couple. I had a lot of very attractive babysitters. I'll just put it to you that way. But I would go to visit my mom, and like I almost felt like for her I was the litmus, like how deep she went religiously. Like she took me to this one revival church, and she had found, and we went there, and and they were playing songs, and it was groovy and all that. But then all of a sudden the prayer leader stopped and said, "There's a witch in this room." And I start looking around like this, and then I'm thinking, does he think I'm awake? What's going on? Because I'm the new guy here. And then some lady in the back like took off running out the door or something, and he goes, "The witch has left" or something, and I remember the awkward ride home. My mom goes, "That's never happened before," and I said, "Mom, those people are crazy,"
Mm-hmm.
and she never went back to them. But it was one of those things where,
Oh, you're so lucky. That's what I was raised in.
well, yeah, I mean, I was waiting for them to pull out the snakes and start twirling the
Mm-hmm.
snakes around. But it was one of those things where, like, but for mom had to go on this journey of, and you almost have to find, like, when you're seeking truth, you're going to find bits here and there. But I think you're also going to find, and I feel like for a lot of folks, religion is that filling that emptiness, or feeling it's fulfilling it's filling something, and which, like you said earlier, could be just as it could be damaging if you just like being obsessed with wrestling or being obsessed with anything. If if your thing is right and everybody else is wrong, and you refuse to try to digest any information that challenges that,
Mm-hmm.
even if even and this is the thing, is I think even you don't you're not going to necessarily change your mind if you don't listen to opposing views. It's either going to steel man your views, make you feel more solid with it, or you might start to see, hey, maybe this, or maybe it's this. And I feel like with my mom, she went on the spiritual. It was great because she ended up meeting my stepfather, who for a pastor, he's actually a lot more grounded than you would expect. And and I think that they've been married ever since, and they're very happy. But I feel like a lot of times religion can be a crutch. It could be, if you're not challenging your beliefs, do you really believe them? I guess is what I'm
Exactly.
asking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is really easy for people, because by and large, people don't like conflict. I mean, there are some who get off on it for some
Yeah.
reason. Uh, Speaking of Twitter, uh,
Hey, by the way, this is what I think Twitter is for most people.
basically, yes.
Yep. And then there comes Elon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's to me that's what Twitter is. Anyways,
It is really easy to going back to to the very start of this, it's really easy to just accept what you're told,
Mm-hmm.
to not question it, and just, oh, this is the way things are. This is the way things have always been. And because of that, when it comes to religion, it becomes like the wallpaper. It's just something that's there.
Mm-hmm.
But most people don't really analyze or think about it. Like I have a friend, have a friend who was saying that he was a Christian, and I asked him, you know, what denomination did you grow up in? He's like, Baptist. Okay, cool. I'm an American Baptist Christian. Got it. Cool. What are some of your favorite Bible verses? I'm an American Baptist Christian. What does that mean? It means I go to a Baptist church. Oh.
And
Can you go into a little more detail? Well, I'm a Christian.
yeah, but like, what do you believe?
What do you mean? What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
It means I go to church on Sundays and I'm a Christian. And like the person literally had not a clue about even the most fundamental tenets of Christianity. Like, couldn't explain the Trinity.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's kind of Christianity 101.
Yeah.
With a few exceptions.
Well, it's kind of like I don't know if you remember the girl, and I think this extends even for beliefs in general. Like the girl that was, I don't know if you saw, she was on Rising, it was on the Hill, and she wrote a book about like how wokeism is ruining America. She wrote this book about it, how wokeism.
And she couldn't define
what woke is. Yeah,
and when she was asked about it, she completely face-palmed
and then she played the victim on Twitter, like, oh, they were, and I'm like, no, I mean, that's kind of like, if you're writing a book about it, that you should do that. And I think that kind of goes back to the dangers of being locked in on something without being a critical thinker.
Well, the thing is, the whole woke snowflake triggered any number of these
PC. Remember when PC was the word?
PC. Yeah. Any number of these zinger things. They're words.
Yeah.
That you're told are bad words. But it's never defined why they're bad words. And when they try to define why they're bad words, 9 times out of 10, they start trying to explain why the Beatitudes are bad.
Yeah. You could almost argue like
I have literally sat down with people and watched them argue wokeism is bad, and when they try to explain wokeism, it's basically them just listing the Beatitudes.
Yeah.
From the Gospels. And then when you show them that, they're like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. I meant, you just said it.
Yeah, exactly.
You literally just explained that if you want to break it down this way and you want to define it this way, your opposition to wokeism is based on the fact that wokeism is exactly what Christ said to be like. Therefore, your opposition to it makes you anti-woke vis-a-vis anti-Christ.
Interesting. That's interesting.
And I'm not saying that from a spiritual perspective, like demons, fire, monsters from the pit of hell, but in a philosophical sense. You're adopting, you're saying, no, I don't want to do this, even though Christ told me to do this.
Yeah.
And the reason I state it that way is because I see it most coming from quote-unquote Christians. So as a Christian minister myself, it's my job. I'm not talking to atheists. I'm not talking to unbelievers. I'm not talking to anybody else. This is just for the Christians. You're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
If you're opposed to wokeism, you need to go back and read what the Bible says.
And you got to really define what you think wokeism is before you start condemning
Mm-hmm.
it. You know, like, and not to defend again, just thinking the inverse way of the other direction. I think that calling people MAGA or fascist because they have a belief that's to the right of what someone else believes. I think that can be that's a little bit obtuse in a lot of cases because
When the name calling starts, the argument is over.
yes, put it simple.
It's like, because here's the thing, and this is coming from somebody who was on the inside. I know how to brainwash people. I know how it works.
Yeah,
Um, of course, I was never told that that's what I was doing, but in retrospect, oh yeah,
yeah,
which is one of the reasons that I can see it, and I can point it out and be like, nope,
yep. I
that one's
remember
bad.
that.
Um, is I totally forgot what I was just saying.
No, I mentioned the like calling people MAGA when the
Oh
name
yes,
calling
the name
starts.
calling.
Yeah,
That is a very subtle, very unfortunately now socially acceptable way of dehumanizing people.
yeah,
And
othering.
I don't just mean that in in an abstract way, but literally looking at people as subhuman.
Mm-hmm. Othering them. You know, they're other than
Democrats,
yeah,
Republicans, well,
magatards or something.
maggots.
Yeah,
That one really offends me, honestly. Even though I'm completely opposed to everything that MAGA stands for, calling someone else a maggot is, you got to be
yeah,
Sergeant Slaughter to get away with that.
yeah. I'll let Sergeant Slaughter call you maggots. But I kind of liken that to the people that stand on the corner at the of the street where people are going to the club and they're screaming, "You're going to hell if you go in and have a drink." You're not. No one's going to stop and go. You know, I was going to go in and have a drink, but this person's screaming with the Bible in their hand. I want to go hang out with them instead. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like, all right, when you're that way about any belief, whether you're leaning one way or the other, whatever that is, when you're name calling somebody and you're dehumanizing them, I don't think you want to be right. I think you want to win the argument, or you want to. It's almost it goes back to almost like that WWE is better than my thing I like is better than anything you like and that kind of thing.
To me, it comes down to a very fundamental thing for everyone, regardless of what your obsession is. And that is something that requires a lot of huevos to address, and that is if you are so obsessed that you need something else to give you validity, you have no value within yourself, or you don't see a value within yourself.
Interesting.
So
Wow.
if I have to be a Christian to define me, then Christianity defines me. If I have to be a wrestling fan to define me, then being a wrestling fan defines me. If I have to, you know, if I have to be someone with schizoaffective disorder, then that defines us. Uh,
It's
you
part of
know,
who we are, but not
it's
all encompassing.
these are aspects of the things that make me up. They're facets of
Mm-hmm.
what make me me. One of those things is not everything about me, and if the one thing overtakes everything else, that becomes who I am, who you are, who everyone is.
Wow.
And if we're defining ourselves through those or with that lens, it reflects on how we see everything else. So if I am a wrestling fan and you don't like wrestling, how dare you? If I like AEW because I have been watching forever and it reminds me of the old days, and you're still watching WWE, how dare you?
Mm-hmm.
My emptiness is going to be filled with looking for other emptinesses.
Wow.
My anger and frustration are going to look for things that anger and frustrate me so that I can continue to feed that and sustain this thing that defines me. Well, and if the thing that, like I say, if the thing that defines me in religion is looking for sin, I'm going to look for sin. If it's looking for ways to show people how to live better, how to hopefully treat other people better by treating other people that I used to look down on better, I'm going to try to do that because it makes me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I could go through Twitter and shit on posts left, right, and sideways, and there have been times that I have gotten a bit out of line.
MJF. MJF.
Well,
no.
that's a bit of a different story. Actually, there is a backstory, but we'll talk about that off.
Okay. Yeah. So I didn't mean to. Oh man, I'm so sorry. You were saying such good stuff, and I threw you off with that.
Oh no, it's okay.
That randoms chiming in.
It's okay. Stupid twitchy legs.
Oh, good.
Okay. What I was gonna say, or what I was saying, is it's like what you focus on, where you put your attention, you're gonna find those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to attract things. So if you're in a bad mood and you're one of those people who is constantly in a bad mood, regardless of what you try to do to get out of that bad mood, unless you recognize it and address it head on.
Yeah.
There's just going to be things around you that put you in a bad mood.
Yeah, especially if you're blaming other things on your bad mood instead of taking ownership for it.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to be in a bad mood all the time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And there are certain outlets that rather than, that just perpetuate that bad mood.
I gotta kind of jumping into that Twitter thing too. How do you feel about, like, I try to manicure? That's not it. I try to manage my Twitter
I know
thing.
the word you're looking for, and I can't.
It's not manicure. Curate.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I'm trying to manicure my Twitter. Thank you. I tried to manicure my Twitter. I was
thinking Manscaped. So.
Hey, speaking of our manscaped.com, if you want to shave your bush, new sponsor we just picked. No, but the like with Twitter, I try to curate my timeline to reflect more positive people. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of wrestling, a lot of mental health stuff. I have another Twitter account that's my teacher Twitter account, and that's all like education and psychology stuff. But then, like, I'll tend to mute. I don't really like blocking people unless they're like coming at me through DMs, but I'll mute people that are just negative. But there's still accounts that like they'll screen grab and then retweet something really terrible that somebody else said, and it's like, look at this idiot, look at what this terrible person said.
I've been guilty of that,
and
I myself.
What do you like? I agree with that. It's a stupid thing that a lot of times these people, I am also upset at the person and what they said, but to me it's almost like, is that type of posting, like showing people, hey, look at this moron, even if you agree they're a moron, is that helpful, or is that actually more doing more harm, or is it kind of almost as trollish as the trolls that they're mocking? In your thought, and what are your thoughts on that? It's
having been guilty of that particular crime myself. Yes, to all of the above, actually.
And I'll do it again.
No, it's one of those situations where I think it comes down to if this person is saying saying things that are horrendous and awful and terrible and need to be called out for it, they need to be called out for it.
Yeah.
I don't think you necessarily need to drone on about what an awful person they are, particularly if their post reflects that.
Yeah.
Calling somebody out and pointing out, hey, this person is not, says they're pro Black Lives Matter. We'll just throw one out there.
Mm-hmm.
Says they're pro Black Lives Matter, but look at all of this racist crap that they're posting.
Mm-hmm.
Call them out.
Yeah.
But don't go off on a diatribe. If it's this person disagreed with my wrestling opinion, look at how stupid they are.
Yeah.
Of all the things in the world that you could criticize, you're criticizing this. You're making yourself look like more of an idiot at that point.
Yeah.
Take the blows, roll with it. Just because somebody says something doesn't mean they're right. Mm-hmm. And it's one person on the internet getting upset with you.
Yeah.
And this is me preaching to the choir now. This is me looking in a mirror preaching. The one or two people that disagree with you and call you names and so on and so forth are one or two people. They usually have 6 or 7 followers each.
Yeah. And they're something bunch of numbers that,
or something patriot.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that's just been my experience.
Mm-hmm.
You've also got 100 other people, 200 other people that have liked and retweeted your shit,
mm-hmm.
that agree with you, but you're pissed off about the 2 that didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
How dare you come attack me? And the thing is, it's like when you break that down and when you look at it honestly, that's pride.
Yep.
And looking at it from the caller point of view, that's what caused Lucifer to fall.
Mm-hmm.
That's what brought Lucifer down, was that I'm right, no one else can question me. How often are we offended because we get questioned?
Yes. Woo!
And at the same time, when an idiot comes at you and is just like, spewing whatever, don't even acknowledge it.
Yeah.
It's like a mosquito biting you.
Yeah, you're giving it power over you.
Yeah. Don't give the mosquito power.
Bloodsuckers, I'll tell you. Well, Reverend, it's almost been 2 hours, buddy.
It has?
It doesn't even feel like it.
I was thinking it was like 45 minutes or so.
Oh, no. It's an hour and 45 minutes at this point. And
Crazy.
we could go on even longer, but this has been fantastic. I almost want to make this a monthly thing, checking in with the Reverend.
I would definitely like that.
We got to check in with the Reverend. Got to go to church.
I'll have a place to check in next month.
And coming soon. I'm thinking probably in the middle of June at some point, perhaps, because we got to let the school year get out, let everybody kind of get relaxed in the summer. But I'd like to experiment with some wrestling podcast stuff with you.
I want to bounce a little bit of that off. We can talk about that when we hop off.
Yeah, we can talk about that offline, but some ideas there. But before we break off, the Reverend, is there any? I usually ask the guests to give a final, like, words of wisdom or advice for mental health, but in your case, it's almost like a final sermon of the podcast. Would you have any final thoughts or a final thing to take?
It's not the final sermon; it's a closing.
Oh yeah, let me not say the final sermon. For this podcast.
This is the doxology.
Yeah, you go. Doxology. We'll go with that. Thank you. Hey.
Use those fancy words I learned in college.
There you go. The doxology.
Don't be assholes to one another. Buy coffee for somebody randomly. Just do something nice for somebody that you've never met. Don't ask for anything in return. Just go out, make somebody's day.
And on that note,
you will be amazed at what it will do for you.
Awesome. And on that note, thank you so much, Reverend, for once again hopping on. This has been Checking In with the Reverend. And in the description, again, the GoFundMe is still live and active. It's growing, and spread the word too. But anything can help. If you want to help out the Reverend and of course the adorable Muda. The link will be at the end of this podcast. Make sure you check it out. And for the good Reverend, this has been AA Ron, aka Mind Runner. Thanks for tuning in, and go make somebody's day. Go make a perfect stranger's day, and don't expect anything in return, because what you'll actually get is you'll find some joy in that. Have a good one. Catch new episodes of Mental Health Mondays every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Start your week off with a smile and some inspiration.